Good morning. This is day 23, the last day of travel on our 3-week trip here. We're currently at the Iroquois Lock and Canal. This is our view. It's really pretty impressive. We're getting ready to leave. As we leave, here is the situation. Iroquois Dam is here, the active lock. We covered all this in the last episode. The marina is located in the old lock. We left and headed down the St. Lawrence. The marina isn't fancy, but it has everything you need. The photo doesn't do it justice. It caters more to seasonal boating. For the first half of our journey, we'll be starting at Iroquois, working our way past Morrisburg and up to Upper Canada Village. That's a total distance of about 15 miles.
The river has narrowed here to about 0.4 miles wide, and right here, when we go by the island, right here when we go by this island, it'll be about 0.3 wide. There's another channel here, and our speeds have been running up even to 9 miles an hour at 2,500 RPM, which for this boat we'd expect only to see less than 6 miles an hour, or about 6 miles an hour. So we see the current. So back there is the Iroquois Lock we just came through.
If we look at aerial maps, along the way there are numerous roads and structures that have been buried when this part of the waterway was flooded in the 50s for the St. Lawrence Seaway. You can see these two roads here that exist underneath the water. It's potentially shallow there. They're under any number of feet of water. Later on, we'll be able to see some evidence of that from the shore, where you can see what looks like a boat ramp. It's actually just a road disappearing into the water.
Up ahead, there's an American island. The main channel goes to the Canadian side. It's about 0.3 miles wide, and we tend to pick up speed where there are narrows. On the other side of the island, it's a quarter mile wide or so, but a tiny bit shallower than this channel. The U.S. side at this point does not have homes. There is development. I think there's a road along there. There's a town over there. Morrisburg is farther up. We have a fair number of homes here. This would technically still be sort of a suburb of Iroquois, we'll call it that. Almost opposite this island here, right there heading that way, is a small creek, and that was something I identified just from aerial photos and from nautical maps as a possible little anchorage that would be good for a shallow boat like ours, and that's sort of what we like. There are marshes on that side, houses on that side. I can see the bridge with a culvert through it. That's the kind of place we like to anchor. So I keep track of all those possible places along the Canadian side, and wherever we go I look for things like that, and I make note of them, because you never know how far you go in one day, and you just may need a place to stop. So that does look somewhat favorable, but this is the morning. We stayed at Iroquois, so we don't need to stop here.
Here's aerial photography of the next section here from Morrisburg, past Crysler Park Marina that we were going to just drive by and look at. It had been a possible place to stay, but we won't need it. And then on to Upper Canada Village. Along the way, we inadvertently took pictures and passed over Crysler Shoal. Crysler Shoal is well within the USA. You can blame the Americans. It's to the right of that marker. The ship evidently lost steering or power. I'm not sure the story, and it ended up running up right to that marker. So that was kind of a familiar sight to see when I saw it in the news. So I went and checked it out. It sat for quite a while. Fortunately, I think they partially unloaded it and they got it off the reef. We're able to pass over. I think the depth was only about 5 foot difference. Their draft, let's say, is 20-something, 23 feet, whatever. And they rode up on it maybe 5 feet. So, interesting. In that section of river in the area or region of the Crysler Shoal, on the American side, that is to starboard, is a long stretch of natural land, and there are fishermen that take advantage of that. It's undeveloped. That is the Wilson Hill Wildlife Management Area. We continued up not too much further, and on the port side, the Canadian side, we came up to a memorial. This memorial is the Battle of Crysler Farm historic site. This is about the War of 1812. The battle here actually took place on November the 11th, 1813, when a large American invasion force sought to work its way downriver to Montreal, and they were defeated by a smaller British force here at Chrysler's Field or Chrysler's Farm, and the Americans gave up their attempt to cross to this side of the river. We headed into the bay just past the Crysler Farms historical monument, and this is Upper Canada Village. It consists of 40 historic buildings. They've been restored, and there are reenactors there. It includes many working mills and workshops. A number of these buildings, or most of them, were relocated from 10 different communities which were flooded out during the 50s. And as a result of the seaway construction and the construction of the dam at Cornwall, which raised the water level. I got really excited while traveling the shore looking for a place to land because I saw a young man wearing reenactor attire standing up poling a boat inland just a bit, just on the other side of a spit of land. And it looked like, oh, there's a pond there or a canal or something. So we saw the lighthouse. We thought lighthouse means a point. We went around the corner and thought we can enter this canal. No, there's a weir or a dam there. And what that is, they were giving boat rides to tourists, but that's just part of the pond they use to raise the level to run one of the mills they have there. So no luck there. We continued our way. Back on the river, we would occasionally see a freighter, not as many as I thought there might be. We continued on to an area of a lot of islands, and these islands are actually the remains of hills or a ridge of hills, and there had been rivers down the middle in the valleys of these different parts of the St. Lawrence system, but after the 1950s seaway flooding, the construction of the dam at Cornwall and Cornwall Island raised the levels and flooded out of a lot of farms and communities.
We're coming up to Morrison Island Provincial Park. There are a whole series of provincial parks down here, starting with the Crysler Farm and the Upper Canada Village, and there are numerous ones all the way along. We're going to go up between that spot of land there and Morrison Island and go around down there towards, I believe it's Ingleside and the Parkway. We don't tend to have breakfast. Oh, there's something floating there. We got to avoid that. That's just a mass of seaweed. Yeah, a real lump right there. But we don't tend to have breakfast. That's maybe due to me. Janet will have peanut butter on bread or something with her coffee. I just have coffee, but we eat lunch whenever, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, even sometimes mid-afternoon, depending if we're busy. I'll leave the helm there. Janet boiled some eggs last night, and then we've got some cheese, and we still have a fair bit of food left over from 3 weeks ago. We're going off course a little here. We got to steer around bits of seaweed, but we've managed pretty well. So we have no more need to top up on water. We've got enough gas to get to our destination, enough left over I'll use for local boating or else for lawnmower gas, so it doesn't go bad. Yeah, we got quite a, this is an eddy. There's quite a bit of floating weeds here. We are not in this here, well, 45 feet of water, but to one side of the channel, we're making 7 miles an hour. In shallower water to the side, we were just doing 6.5. We're out of the main channel there, which if we were over there, we'd pick up another mile an hour or so.
We got off the main channel and up beside the Long Sault Scenic Parkway.
This is Croyle Island. It is in the U.S. It's undeveloped, or appears to be undeveloped. This is West Woodlands Provincial Park and Ingleside.
There's the town of Ingleside I just mentioned at Croyle Island, and we zoom in on the Woodlands Island, west, center, and east. Notice just above the Woodlands Islands, there's a line. That's actually a submerged road, I believe. The plan is to continue east here, and we'll find an opening and head up in between the islands and the mainland. Some of these islands are joined by causeways, others have bridges. So we're going to go through, feel this one out for depth, go very slow, and get through.
Here's a bridge. We're going to go under. It's in the Long Sault Parkway, and it goes from Dickinson Island to Harriet Island.
When passing under a bridge like this, I think we had 6, 7, 8 feet of depth, but you have to watch. There may be debris that's hung up from current, like dead heads and so on, or rocks or boulders to one side. You don't really know how deep the channel is, so you proceed carefully. The Lost Villages. This map shows that prior to July 1st, 1958, the St. Lawrence was the dark blue. The light blue is what resulted after the Cornwall Dam was shut and it started to fill. That was Inundation Day, July 1st, 1958. After Inundation Day, the water started to fill. First, it started to build up at the Cornwall Dam, and that's where things got the deepest. It's farthest downriver, but it gradually pushed its way upriver. In this area, towns were just left and abandoned. Houses moved and so on. Once you got up farther, Morrisburg, Iroquois, those were partially affected in some cases, or they moved the town further inland. Let's zoom back to Wales Island and see what the present site of that town looks like. All that's left is the tops of the hill that was in Wales, and we're rounding the tip. There was actually a road that went over there, and you can see the two roads. They're actually seen through the water in the imagery. Now we round the tip, and we're on our way now to exit this area.
That is Mille Island, or Thousand Islands. The parkway, there's a bridge on the other side, and there's also a bridge here. We're going to this northern tip bridge. We're staying on the path here because there are some shallow points here and obstructions noted. And this area, I'll have to double check how much the flooding was, but a lot of this area was flooded.
Before we leave this area, I want to show you another area of flooding that's very interesting. We did not go over this area, but it is a popular dive site. It's one of the original locks that were superseded by the 1959 flooding. It's Lock 21. All features are intact. All the cement works, sluices, even railings.
We're going through. There is a restaurant up here on the left. It's called the Nautica Bar and Grill, and there's also, I think it's Stormont Yacht Club, and we can see some structures there. So Janet, do you want to go to lunch?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we're going to go to lunch, and it'll be our meal of the day mostly. We'll have snacks tonight. Janet, are you disappointed?
Yes, I'm very disappointed.
Yes. This is our luck in Florida too. Closed Mondays and Tuesdays, open Wednesday. So that's the Nautica Bar and Grill, and it's right now close to 1 o'clock, and we're hungry. I said there was a Stormont Yacht Club there. That's incorrect. This is the Long Sault Marina. I believe that's it right there. Okay. We'll proceed onward. The Lost Villages Museum we'll be able to see from the water. I don't think there's any water access. And then about 2 kilometers or 1.5 miles beyond that is Guindon Park, where we plan to anchor for the night just in their little bay. And that's where we'll be taking the boat out in the morning.
I stuck close to the shore when we went past the Lost Villages Museum property, and I was wondering if there was any water access. There was something that looked like a boat ramp, and I thought, is that canoe ramp? And looked and said, I don't know, what is that? It was on both sides of the peninsula. One side was littered with some cement and boulders. The other side was sort of clear. And we did get up close enough I could see the bottom. If we'd wanted to beach it there, I could have jumped out in knee-deep water and guided it in. But I thought, we're just going to get on where we're going. But it turned out, I double-checked the map, and yes, it was a road that cuts right across the peninsula. Cornwall, Ontario is just off the screen to the right. It's up in the top right corner. You can see in red our path to Guindon Park, to the dock there, and that's where we stayed for the night. In the light greenish blue line down at the bottom, that's a straight cut through they've made for the freighters to approach the locks. We have the Eisenhower lock, then the Snell lock. Now, what keeps the water levels up, what made it to flood, is first of all, they've got a dam in this one location here, and then they have this long, big, huge power dam, so power generation dam.
This is Cornwall's Guindon Park, Guindon, washrooms over there. The ladies' room has showers, the men's are locked up. Watch over some rocks and shallows there. But here we've got 3 feet on this side. Towards there we've got overflow dam, and there's a big control dam over there and the locks as well. But here we are, and Janet is replenishing our flower collection for the bow of the boat.
We had arrived early afternoon. We did venture out on a separate little trip just to head towards the power dam, but it looked pretty menacing, and we didn't go very far. One thing we did do was go along this long dike, Guindon Park, and you can see across the bay, big rock pile, that's a dike, and you can see the trees are nestled down deep there. We've driven behind there before. The road behind it, and the land is about 10 or 15 feet below the rock level there. So that's just to keep back the water that was flooded in 1959. I'll take you back to episode 1 of our trip when we started from Montreal. I'd had to relocate the truck and trailer from Montreal, where we launched, an hour south down the road to Cornwall, and we had the truck and trailer stashed at some friends. So thank you, Rakesh and Savannah, for allowing us to keep the truck and trailer there in your yard. We picked that up. Actually, they picked us up, and we went for dinner, and that was a good time. And we had the truck and trailer ready for the next morning. We were the only ones on the dock overnight. There were a couple people camped with tent over on the other side of the park. We got up in the morning, and there were tons of fishermen out with their boats to get an early start. And once the rush was done on the ramp, we got our trailer in and loaded up, and we were off on our way home. We had one travel day to get home, and we had a great welcome. It was a really good trip. We were gone for 23 days. 21 days of those were major travel. We consumed 275 liters. That is about 72.5 US gallons of gasoline. We traveled about 360 miles, and it works out to just under 5 miles per gallon, going at our slow trawler speed. It's good for economy, and it was great for seeing the sights. Thank you very much for joining us on this trip. If you haven't seen the other episodes, please look back. This is episode 11. And thanks to you subscribers who have been tuning in regularly, and I'm glad that you appreciate it, and I appreciate your comments too. It's good to dialogue with you. I look forward to publishing more material this summer, and we hope to get on the Erie Canal and beyond. For those of you who are not familiar with the channel, take a look back at other material about the boat and its restoration, our trip on the Trent Severn Canal, our time in Florida, 3 weeks on the St. Johns River. Thank you very much, and we'll sign off for now.